Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of Novel Therapy. I'm Kate Fennessy, aspiring author and social media marketer.
And I'm Helen Brown, New York Times bestselling author.
So welcome everyone to our first ever episode.
Well, it's more of a clinic, really.
It is a clinic, that's exactly right. So we're going to basically trace the journey of writing what will be my first proper attempt at a novel. And Helen is going to help guide and input into that process, which I'm very, very lucky to have access to you, Helen, for this. It's very exciting.
Well, as I say, I'm not a teacher. I've never, I don't even know if you can teach writing, but I've got rather more experience than I'd like to claim, and anything I can do to help, I'd be grateful to help you. And if you're listening and struggling with a creative project of your own, maybe you'll gain something from these sessions. I hope you do.
Yeah, and look, exactly, it doesn't have to be a novel that you might be attempting, but anything creative. And today we're going to talk about that as a sort of a first step in terms of what the creative process is all about and how you can set yourself up for success in that. So what we're going to do in terms of structure is we're going to start with a checkup, because we are a clinic. We're a clinic for first-time writers.
And Jonah here is the receptionist.
Yes, Jonah is sort of letting us in.
Check you in, yes.
Exactly. So in terms of our checkup, that's us just catching up and seeing what's been happening. So what's been happening for you lately, Helen?
I don't know. I'm having a year, I think my word for this year is remarkable. I'm trying remarkable things that I haven't tried before, just to see how they feel like, because if you keep doing the same thing, churning out books every year, you get the same results. Whereas this year, I've written a children's book that's coming out in October, and we're doing this, which is such fun.
It is quite remarkable. And speaking of words, I think we should let our listeners know that we're already building a little bit of a anti-word list. Words we want to avoid.
It's like a swear jar.
It's a swear jar.
But it's really a bad writer's jar.
Yes, because writers need to avoid cliches and daggy, annoying words. So the first word that is on that list is journey.
Journey. We try not to use journey. How much goes in the jar? 50 cents?
We've got to work it out. 50 cents is a good start.
And look, the other word that people are using far too much at the moment is amazing.
It is an amazing journey.
I know life is amazing, but not everything that happens in it is amazing.
Yes.
I think it's a lazy word.
Yeah, we have a third word, which is lovely.
And so, look, I've been victim of use. I culprit. I really do. I fess up, and it wasn't only about 2 months ago I realised I was using it in almost every email. It was terrible. So now I'm using different parts of my brain to actually think about what I'm saying to somebody. Is it lovely or is it stimulating?
Yes, there's so many better options. So that's something you'll notice us just policing.
Yes,
exactly. And in terms of my checkup, it's similar to what you're saying about being focusing on remarkable. I'm actually focusing on the idea of exploring at the moment. I went on a fabulous non-conference recently in Byron Bay, which was actually really, really good. And it reminded me in a sort of totally unexpected way of things like playfulness, inviting playfulness into my life, which could mean my work life, my anything, and just this idea of exploring, it really invigorated me, and it's just lately it's on my radar to just keep that up, keep that idea.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
and I think that's so good for creativity.
Yeah,
and it's something that women don't allow themselves much of at all.
Exactly.
We're very serious, we're very committed, we're constantly busy, we're looking after everyone else, we forget how to play.
Absolutely, that's true. And I think that's a apt way to basically open the clinic discussion for today, because I think the main part of what we want to do is kind of, touch base about this whole process. And I think the natural starting point is why we write and how we write. We wanted to sort of tackle that from the start, because Helen and I were talking about this week that, like, I'm a single mother, I run a business. Trying to give space to this project has been my biggest challenge. It's been on my to-do list for God knows how many years, but I've never adequately had that mental energy. It's not so much been a time thing, it's been an energy thing. So we wanted to talk about that today. Like, what are your thoughts on how do you invite in and nurture space for creativity when you're a woman.
Yeah, I think it's a very conscious effort you have to make. I honestly believe there's something like a muse, or it's your subconscious is a word you can use if you don't want to use an old-fashioned word like muse.
Yeah.
But you have to actually create a gap so that those ideas can come in. I've never had a good idea in a room full of noisy people, or well, maybe changing the third nappy for the day. Something might have hit me like a thunderbolt, but you need those quiet times of peace that allow these to, so you can welcome these ideas in and examine them gently. And quite often that's where the best, it's like a seed in the ground at night. It does most of its growing in the dark, and I think it's the same with creativity.
So are you talking about downtime, like almost, I'm going to say scheduling in, which is not small.
Well, I think the downtime to me is playing that annoying shark game on my iPad. You know, you don't confuse downtime with watching game shows on TV.
Right.
It's something that puts you in a contemplative space. We're here on Phillip Island. It's just wonderful. You can walk along the beach and look at the waves coming in like layers of lace, and you can think your ideas are coming in with each wave and washing out if they're not so good. I think you have to listen to Jonah.
He's just agreeing.
Yeah, so I think there's something about that, honouring the creative soul within yourself. And for a lot of women, it's also time. It's time and energy are the two great things we lack. And when you think of male writers and what they've had in their lives, Marcel Proust, lay in bed and waited for his maid to come in and bring him croissants and coffee every morning. And if he felt like it, she would stay and talk to him.
Yeah. Oh, just another level. Yeah.
And we have to find it and not be angry about it, though a little bit of anger can be a very good catalyst, as I think you might find with your writing.
Yeah, it drives you.
But ultimately it can harm you if you hang on to it too long.
Yeah. Do you know, I'm going to take these headphones off because it's to check our sound, but I can see our sound's working. There we go, that's better. Yeah, well, that's a really interesting starting point, because when I reflect on those times in my schedule, it's the stuff I'm doing without realising how important it is. Like most days when I work from home, I march off down to I live in Frankston, I march on down to Oliver's Hill and I do a little quick loop. I do the same loop so I'm not overthinking it, but I see the bay most mornings, and just that touch, that encounter sets me up well for the day. And even drive time, like driving down here with music, I like that kind of space and time.
I think routine is a very helpful thing in the process of creativity, because it calms you down, and as you say, you don't have to think consciously too much. And I'm a great stickler of that. I love my morning coffee, and that also wakes me up. And because writing is solitary, for me it's lovely to sit in a cafe and just observe people for half an hour. A tradie came into the local cafe this morning. I watched, he entered like some kind of lion into some not very safe place, and it was interesting watching him. And
that's so true.
So there's inspiration in everyday life,
absolutely,
and in these routines.
Observing people, that's absolutely true, because in holiday mode I love people watching, but I think I forget to do that in my ordinary life.
I'm an obsessive eavesdropper. There's nothing I love more than sitting in a restaurant or cafe. I do like eavesdropping too, actually. I think it's the right.
I hear some good conversations on the beach in summer down on the Mornington Peninsula, like hearing young girls in their 20s talking about stuff, and you just think, wow, it's such a different world. Yeah, well, there you go. That's really interesting.
And another thing, curiosity. And I never stop learning, even though I've been writing for a living for 45 years. I still don't consider myself a master. I still keep learning, and I'm fascinated to see what's happening in the world and what people are being subjected to, their brains, and because I want to be part of it for as long as possible.
Jonah wants to be part of it too.
Oh, well, we all know that.
But it's really lovely that that's the first starting point that we discussed. We discussed it last week. Was it last week when we did our sort of a trial run? We couldn't quite get our recording up to speed yet, but You talked about the idea of the non-physical and tuning into that, and I think that's been a lovely thing for me to just even think about over the last week and what that means. And we talked about writing for grief and writing through pain and writing as a way of writing for therapy, which is connected to this theme. And I think that's been really interesting just to tune into. I think I didn't realise how important that side of it was.
I think if you can be really true to yourself, true to your pain, and authentic and honest, then you might come through with something that others will relate to, and that can be quite a hard thing to do. We'll talk about that later. But I think by the time we get further into your book, you'll have revealed so much of your soul on these podcasts that it won't be a problem to you.
It's true. Well, it's funny because when I got here this morning, I've handed Helen my first 4,000 words. So Helen's encouraging me just to get it down. I'm not editing too much. But it's funny, the first thing I said when I sat down was I just dove into the past, into a story of telling Helen the moment I found out my husband had cheated on me in real life, which is very much wrapped around this novel. And it's funny because I don't know how to explain it. I've probably pushed away a lot of those memories. They're getting dislodged. I had to file them away under too heavy, can't deal right now. They're processing somewhere in the back annals of my subconscious, but for me to sit down and tell that story this morning, that's because I'm writing.
And do you know what? That distance, that emotional distance you have from the original pain is going to make it a better book. If you're I fully recommend keeping a diary if you want to. I never have, but then I've written weekly columns, which have been like a diary in a way. But
like a public diary.
That's sort of first aid. What you're doing now is digging up ancient pain and turning it around into a different thing that might be helpful to others.
Exactly, that's what I'm very much hoping, because you're right, and I'm a huge diary writer, journal writer, but that's not for sharing, that's just for dumping. That's how I process things. And you're right, it's always emergency. It's high, it's emotional, it's always like blah, 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 blah. I need to get something off my chest. But this is different. This is about telling a story because I want women to realise the power of stepping into who you actually can be. That's very much at the centre for me of this novel. I'm trying to paint a picture of a woman who is stuck in her own prison that she's created for herself, but actually she can evolve out of it, and that's what I want to share. So I've got to dive into those hard memories, and they're still raw. They're still, I can still dive in and think, bloody hell, get washed over with that memory. But you're right, I can use it now. It's not, I won't drown in it. I'll be able to use it for good. So I guess it's turning something negative into a positive.
Fascinating.
But it's interesting. You're right, it's going to be a journey. And one thing we spoke about in our lives on Helen's page is that we're going to have guests on our podcast as well. I think we'll do it in an organic way. We're not going to try and be too structured. A lot of writing podcasts will get very formulaic about
we wouldn't do that. And characters. That's boring. No,
we're talking more, almost more about the sort of spiritual journey, or the perhaps as a woman as well, that side of things. But we will have guests, so that's going to be exciting, because as we weave through this process, as the 4,000 turns into 10 and 20 and more, we'll definitely have guests, so we're excited about that as well.
I must say, I like your opening first few paragraphs. It's a very good sign.
Good.
So and I remember, I think it's really important to have, as I probably said to you, the novel needs to start with chaos. There needs to be some awful pain. And my New York publisher, sometimes I've shown her my stuff and she'll say, up the ante. This isn't enough. This isn't enough pain. This family isn't crazy enough. And that's been very worthwhile, very valuable.
For those, just for some context, Helen and I have worked together, gosh, it must be like 3 years now, do you reckon? Who knows?
It feels like a breath.
Well, exactly. But we worked together originally in a work capacity. So my social media marketing role, I helped Helen.
Which you're brilliant at.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and it's fun working with a client like Helen, who's got a real community who love her. She's always been one of my favourite clients. But our relationships evolved where I started to tell her about writing, and Helen was the first one to sort of hear my idea, my rough concept for the novel, and immediately you said to me, turn up the volume, condense it. So I went away and did that in the planning phase, and now I'm in the writing phase. So it's really exciting to see it come to life. But I've been enjoying it so far.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing, because, you know, chances are you're not going to make a fortune out of this. Statistically, nobody is, but it's a much deeper reward you'll get from it. Yeah. And look, when I think of all the years I've written, the greatest joy for me has been the connection with readers.
Yeah.
And that some have become close personal friends, and I really value their opinions, and they validate where I am on my path, you know. So it's fantastic, really.
Yeah, no, it is. I think for me, the manuscript would be my main goal. Like, just to be able to sit there and say I did it.
Oh, you know, but you're going to be much better than that. And we're going to talk about structure quite soon, I think, because for me, I started out as a 750 word writing columnist, and I was that for many years. And I was telling you, well, that again works very well for a busy woman, in that you don't have to spread out over 8 months a concept, but you do have this deadline every week. And I remember, I was just telling you earlier, I wrote while I was in labour with Catherine. I was hammering out a column, and then having a space for yourself. This is so vital for a woman. I did much of my work on the kitchen table for years and years, and then finally we got a spare bedroom, and I moved my desk in there and got an old desk, which I still have, and the doors became absolutely pockmarked with 2 little boys throwing stuff at them saying, come out of there, Mum. But these things all make us stronger and more determined to keep writing.
I think so. And look, I've got a space.
That's good.
I'm in a place where I've got my own study. My daughter, who's 16, doesn't quite realise the difference between when I'm working, which is that she just comes in. Yeah. But when I'm writing, I don't like being interrupted.
I think we will call up Marcel Proust's maid, and she can come out of the grave and
she can
stand
take care
at
of
your
Emmy.
door.
But Emmy's great, but she doesn't realise the process is so different, and I'm lost in my head, and I want to be able to just do that. So maybe I need a sign. It's a sliding door, my one. So maybe I need a writer in progress.
Because even my beloved husband Philip, when I'm working on a book, if it's at home, he'll say, would you like a cup of tea? And I think, no, I would not like a cup of tea. I'm just about to have something happen in this book.
It's this funny thing, and I think Emmy doesn't quite understand. So maybe I need to start to tell her when I'm writing, I think I'll have a signal. Maybe I'll just close the door fully, because usually it's always...
She's old enough to understand.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I think she can respect what I'm doing, but it's just that thing of, I like quiet space and just not being interrupted. But I think just to finish this first bit for our first episode, we spoke last time about the why of writing, and I think that was interesting and good for people to think about, because you know, you asked me why I'm doing this, and I guess I've said it before, but I'm writing to heal, I'm writing to share, I'm writing in the hope to, you know, I mean, it is about capturing and digesting what happens in your life as well. There's a beautiful quote I just want to read that I found a while back. My book club read an older book by Helen Brown, and she said this about journaling, and I just thought, yes, I so related. So she said about journaling, you keep it not only because it gratifies your urge to sling words around every day without impunity, but because without it you will lose your life. Its detail will leak away into the sand and be gone forever. And I really love that, because I feel the same with the novel. It's like this desperate desire to capture and catalogue what I've experienced, then with the extra element of hoping it might help someone through a shitty time, really. I mean, that's what it is for me. But for those who haven't heard of your background, Helen, like, why did you write? What was the why for you all those years ago when you began your writing journey?
Well, originally, I think it was some form of postnatal depression that was undiagnosed, and the only qualification I had was in journalism. So, and my mother had been in journalism, so it was very natural for me to turn to the typewriter, as it was then. And I had, you know, Sam when I was 19 and Rob when I was 21, and I was nuts, really. And then when Sam was run over and killed at the age of 9, I had this kind of crisis as a professional, not just as on a personal level, because I'd been writing all these light-hearted pieces about being a mum in the suburbs, and then this terrible thing had happened to us, and I was only 28. And again, like you, I think, I decided to make this decision to share that with readers. And tremendous healing came back to me from those people because of it.
So you wrote about it in your columns first?
Yeah. Just a week after it had happened.
Hell.
I didn't know what to do. I thought I should stop writing altogether, or I keep pretending nothing's happened, or I own up to this thing and just let it go.
The door straight away.
And people were a lot more tight-laced, tight-lipped, and emotionally inept around grief then.
Yeah, they wouldn't have the vocabulary, would they?
No, and people would cross the road rather than see me and have to deal with whatever state I might be in that particular day. But you see, I found out through writing about it that I wasn't alone. There is so much sorrow and grief out there in the world. And we need to demystify that and share it with each other, but not in a creepy, martyrish way.
No.
But just make it a normal part of life.
A shared experience. And between the columns that you started sharing, when did you come up with the idea for Clio?
Well, again, that came from a version of pain. We moved to Australia from New Zealand, and I couldn't get a job here. You know, I was almost famous in New Zealand. And then I came here
as a columnist.
And got here and nobody wanted me. So I thought, what on earth shall I do? And I thought, I remember whenever I wrote columns about Clio, our cat, and about Sam, that's the columns that people most related to. Maybe I should tell that as a full story. And even then I thought it wouldn't. Well, I couldn't get a publisher, I couldn't find an agent. So if you're out there with a manuscript and feeling depressed, don't worry.
That's the normal course, isn't it?
Keep at it. Keep at it. This is a tough game. Stick at it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. That's fascinating. So it really was, it's interesting around that why, isn't it? It's sort of a desire to be seen and heard and forge a path forward and all those mixed things.
For me, personally, I think it's to avoid loneliness.
Yeah, well, I agree. That's why that sort of quote resonates for me too. It's like to be validated as a human being. That's how I see writing. Like if someone said to me, Kate, you're not allowed to journal, I think I'd go quite mad. And if someone said to me, don't write this book, I'd also be really annoyed. It's like,
well, no one's going to say that.
I know, but it's just funny when you're thinking of your why, you realise what it means to you, you know? So there you go. All right, well, look, I think what we're doing at our end of our discussion is the diagnosis. So we're sort of, it's an opportunity to either you give some recommendation or,
Kate,
yes, what's...
My recommendation to you and to any listener who's working on a book or trying to tune into their creative core, particularly if you're female, claim your time, claim your space. Let the non-physical come in, whether it's from a little quirky routine you have going to the coffee shop every day or just looking up at the trees and letting that space come in.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a lovely diagnosis. This is the best clinic ever. I wish doctors told me that. Imagine if you went to the doctor and they said, go and look at trees. That's awesome. And just as a sort of look ahead to the week, is there anything coming up for you, or is there anything you can recommend in general to readers? Is there anything you've been loving at the moment, or a practice or a thing?
Well, I'm absolutely loving Desert Island Discs on the BBC. They're podcasts now, and you can listen to anybody in history, well, in the last 50 years, really choosing their eight most favourite pieces of music. Yesterday I listened to Yoko Ono.
Oh, and I love Yoko Ono.
Oh, she spoke about that moment when John was shot.
Yeah.
And honestly, I had tears welling in my eyes, you know.
She's an incredible woman. She faced so much racism and sexism, really, like more than most people should ever have to.
Yeah.
I mean, she was hated. She was vilified.
Yeah.
just by not fitting the mold of who
So
people saw.
Google
for her
Desert
job.
Island Disc Yoko Ono, and that
Wow,
will be.
I will definitely listen. I love Yoko Ono. I was trying to search for the Marion Keys one, but I got lost in the list. I'll find it again because I love Marion Keys too. On speaking of podcasts, a lot of people might already be aware of this, but I've been really obsessed with The Lady Vanishes. It's a podcast that's on at the moment. If you haven't listened to it, I would recommend you just listen to the episodes. They have ones called Conversations that they do in between, but you could skip those just to get ahead. But it's basically, without trivializing it, it's true crime, but it's essentially an Australian mother who went missing 22 years ago, and her daughter, who's about my age, desperately wants to find her. And there's a sense that the police kind of muddled it. You know what it is actually, to be honest? There's a sense of sexism.
Yes,
because
women's
the police,
lives aren't that valuable.
Yeah, and you know why? Because she was thrice married, so she was a 3-time divorcee, and she had changed her name before she left, and yet there's a lot of suspicious reasons to question whether she may have done that under, from pressure from someone else. Because go and have a look, but the sense I got is you're right. Back in Byron Bay in the day, they just went, married 3 times, she's flaky. Yeah. See you later. She's not missing. She's gone missing voluntarily. It doesn't seem to be the case. No. So it's a great story in the daughter having finally a sense of justice. It's a Channel 7 podcast, and I don't generally watch Channel 7. That's just as a values statement. But it's really good. It's good journalism, and I'm obsessed. So I'll recommend that to people as well.
So are you feeling better now?
Yes.
And I hope you're feeling better too.
I'm feeling a lot better. No, I'm feeling inspired. That's the thing. I think this is a lovely message for my whole being of give space to this, because...
Space to you.
Yeah, it's just a love. I love it. I'm feeling elated. I never leave a clinic like this usually.
Well, that'll be $120, but you can't claim it on Medicare.
Exactly. And if you want to book Helen, good luck. She's very busy. All right, well, that's awesome. And just at the end, so we've mentioned our word list. I think we did well today. We didn't have any lovely, amazing journeys.
We're working hard on that.
Yes. And I don't know if did we mention we're in Phillip Island today?
I think we mentioned it in passing.
Yeah, but we've got a beautiful view, which I'm going to take a photo of just to recall this, because as we've been talking this whole time, we've got this beautiful view of, are they gum? What sort of trees are they?
It's paper bark. Well, we'd call that manuka in New Zealand.
Beautiful Australian bush view, really, which is so gorgeous.
And there was a wallaby out there earlier too. Yeah. This is really my soul home, this place, where I come here to write.
Yeah, this is beautiful.
I just love it. Yeah.
So this is cool. So this has been a Phillip Island edition. We may pop up here in the future as well. But I was just going to say, to follow along on our journey, so Helen and I are both on social. So look up Helen on Facebook if you haven't already found her. Her username is Helen Brown International Author on Facebook, whereas on Instagram it's just Helen Brown Author. And then myself, I've got a few because I've got my business, but the main one I use is my Paperboat Digital Instagram, but I'm also personally on Instagram as Kate Fennessy, and I'm going to hopefully do more of that with my writing. And then I have got a Facebook page again with Paperboat Digital. So we'll be doing, now that we've recorded this one, we will do a live afterwards to share with Helen's community how that went. This is potentially going to be a very special edition live from a very special place. We'll just leave that as a hint, because we'll see how we go setting it up down there. But so yeah.
I hope I don't regret this.
It could be infamous. But the other thing was, especially Helen's fans out there, please leave us questions. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe, leave us a review. But we definitely want to hear from you. Like, leave a comment or a question about your creative journey, because Helen is such a, we're so lucky to have this resource and get this amazing advice from her perspective. So please don't hesitate to ask questions, things you'd like us to cover.
And look, I think you can even think of your life. You use journey.
Did I?
Yep, that's in this way. I think you can think of your life as a creative project. I don't think you even have to think you've got to make something at the end of this. I think every day is such a treasure and such a gift, that to live that as a fully aware human being.
Yeah, and enjoying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's ultimately the the project we all have, isn't it?
It
Your
is,
life.
and that's high creativity. Otherwise, you're just wasting it.
Yeah, well, that's very true. So yeah, feel free to reach out, ask questions, and tune in for next time. So there you go. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see you next time, and and also follow us on YouTube. We'll be popping this video up on YouTube, so we'll shout out to what that is yet when we set it up, which we haven't yet, but we will. So we'll see you next time. Bye. Everyone. Bye.